Chapter 2. Whisperings of War. Belize, Georgia. August 7th, 1998. You have not slept in 3 days. The taunting voice of the Sakari General Yamura echoes through Jake Stewart's mind. 5 days ago, the spirit of Yamura was forcefully implanted into his body through the use of a now-destroyed magical pendant. With the device gone forever, Jake has no method of ridding himself of the other's presence. As soon as sleep overtakes you and your conscious mind falls into dormancy, I shall seize control. The blood I spill with your hands will be immeasurable in repayment for the pain and humiliation you have caused me. Jake finishes his energy drink and crushes the can in his hand. Walking over to the standing cooler door of the Quick Max Gas and Go, he opens it to remove an aluminum can, bearing the image of a skateboarding raccoon. Sorry, kidneys, but it's either you or let Yamura drive, he thinks to himself before popping the tab with a hiss and taking a long drink. Your artificial stimulants will not work forever. I can already feel the fatigue in you. You will not last this day. Very soon my opportunity will arise. Shuddering, Jake fears the resurgence of Yamura in control of his body. After gaining complete control, the Sakari spirit went on a murderous rampage that resulted in the deaths of nearly 20 police and first responders, as well as twice that amount in varying degrees of criminals and other victims. Investigating the deaths caused by Elian Schaefer in his attempts to locate the perfect vessel, Indianapolis homicide detective Dwayne Rollins came to Rockland and confronted the man. His murder by Yamura led several of his friends and colleagues to town for a final showdown at the sheriff's department. Now, 2 of these surviving IMPD officers know Jake's identity and want nothing more than to bring the young serial killer to justice. In an attempt to avoid his pursuers, Jake's path to Florida has been one of misdirection. Rather than taking a direct route south, he has bought his bus tickets in a manner that will prolong his journey to nearly a week in length, with dozens of detours and changeovers. They will find you. You will not be able to outrun them forever, Yamura's voice taunts. They have vast resources, and will spread a net so wide that you cannot help but become ensnared. Don't sound so excited. If I get caught, so do you, Jake whispers under his breath, hoping that none of the convenience store's other customers hear him conversing with himself. Their prisons will not hold me. A yearning for freedom will cause you to come to me for escape. I will kill our oppressors and any who stand in our way. I would rather rot in a cell than have any more blood on my hands because of you. You say this now, yet I believe your opinion would alter after a short period of detainment. Jake finishes the Rad Raccoon energy drink and grabs 2 more from the cooler before approaching the counter. He sets a $10 bill down, trying to block Yamura's continued threats and taunting from his mind. Studying for a big test tomorrow? The clerk, a dark-skinned man only a year or 2 older than Jake himself, asks. For me, every day is a test, Jake sighs, taking his change and unnerving the cashier with his grim tone. As the teenager leaves the store to return to the bus headed south to Miami, he mentally notes how little spending cash he has left. Between the bus fare, food, and drinks, I'm almost out of money already. Fool, Yamura spits with disdain. You did not plan ahead. What did you think you would do once you reached our destination? Starvation will destroy you, and with you so shall I expire. Thanks. The thought of you dying actually did make me feel a little better. Yamura ignores Jake's comments and continues to prod at the teen, tempting him to relinquish his dominance. Allow me to take control, and I will procure us lodgings, food, and currency. I will never freely relinquish control to a monster like you, Jake says aloud, trying to sharpen his resolve by hearing his own voice. You cannot stay awake forever. I do not possess a physical body, and thus have no requirements for rest. I will outlast you no matter how hard you try to fight it. Your feeble human body and mind is designed to shut down and recharge daily. You will go mad, and your health and composition will deteriorate the longer you try and remain awake. Jake returns to the bus and resumes his southbound journey. Slipping on his headphones, he tries to drown out Yamura's constant voice, the loud sounds of a thrash metal band from somewhere in Eastern Europe. He can't understand the lyrics, but the drums and electric guitar riffs make just enough background noise in his mind to block out his other. Despite his hatred for Yamura, the Sakari's words do not escape his notice. What do I do if I can't keep fighting him for control? Inside of Jake's mind, Yamura grins and waits patiently for his inevitable opportunity. Rockland, Indiana, August 5th, 1998. A loud zipper-like sound pierces the air as a dimensional fissure slowly peels open. The former Seraphim warrior turned Grigori deserter, Cedrion, emerges from the pathway. His radiant body glows brightly, even against the bright noon sun. Police tape encircles the warehouse that until recently housed the martial arts dojo of Elian Schaefer. Ignoring the flimsy plastic barriers, Cedrion walks forwards, and his divine light melts away the tape without it ever touching his body. A trace of the Sakari Yamura's energy still lingers in the air, sensed by the Yazata, as well as the scent of blood. 3 humans died here, 1 wounded severely. The one that survived also left blood in the parking lot. Cedrion muses as he walks around the inside of the gutted warehouse. Continuing to look around, he tries to sense the location of his primary quarry, the Book of the Black Earth. Closing his eyes and focusing deeper, he begins to detect the faint, lingering power of the book. Following his deeper sense, Cedrion searches downstairs in the dojo's basement. Despite sensing the book strongly in the basement, he cannot find it anywhere. A new sensation crosses Cedrion's awareness, and he begins to perceive a black mist caught between the veil of the seen and the unseen. Cedrion returns outside to investigate this newly sensed feeling. The mist hovers in the form of now-gone birds in several places. Powerful sorcery was at work here. The after effects of magic rise into the air, and Cedrion knows that whoever was here before him must have transformed himself into the birds to escape into the sky. "Hey, you! This is a crime scene! What are you doing in there?" A young police officer shouts. The man is new to the force, having still been in training when the carnage at the police station occurred. With so much turmoil in the city following the disaster, all cadets were called into action, regardless of finishing the academy. Officer Dominic Carter thumbs the snap open to free up his handgun and nervously takes a few steps closer to the stranger. The man has an abnormal glow to his pale skin, and his hair is far too white to be natural for his perceived age. Officer Carter blinks several times, trying to clear the image of ghostly wings out of his sight, which flicker behind the man. "You shall be my eyes and ears," Cedrion says with a smile. "When you locate the boy responsible for the damage here, you will contact me. I must know his whereabouts as soon as they are learned." Before Officer Carter can respond, Cedrion uses his power of Shunkon Ito to travel through the void between reality and the astral plane to materialize behind the officer. Turning in slow motion to the Yazata's superior speed, Officer Carter tries to pivot towards the sound of movement from behind. Cedrion gently touches his index finger to the man's forehead and implants his spell of control throughout every nerve within his body. Stepping back and reopening the fissure, Cedrion leaves Rockland to return to his search for the lost and extremely dangerous Book of the Black Earth. Perched atop a telephone pole across the street, a large crow watches every movement and listens to every word spoken with deep interest. Why is a Yazata snooping around here? Master Tor's Forgeron wonders, before remembering that the Book of the Black Earth was originally written by the order of Yazatan scribes called the Aralim. He's trying to reclaim their property from Schaefer. Forgeron begins to smile inside of the bird's form, before squawking loudly and flying off with a rustling of feathers. Finders keepers. The secrets of the Yazata's ancient magics will be mine now. Their use of magic predates our very existence as humans. There's no telling the depth of spellcraft they possess, and that we as humans have not yet begun to unravel. Florence, Italy, August 3rd, 1998. Possessed by Inyana, Leora spent several years using Uziel's resources in an attempt to locate the vessels of Yamura and Hui before their acolytes. Her hope has been that she can kill her brother's host before he is revived, thereby crushing his attempts to return to the human world. The strain on her body grows more each year. Premature signs of aging materialize on the once beautiful Leora Nadav. Deep lines run through her face where the skin is sunken into her skull, and dark rings encircle her eyes from little more than a few hours of sleep, as Inyana need not have to rest while possessing another's body. She rests only enough to keep her vessel alive, and nothing more. Over the course of the past 6 years, Inyana has begun to learn more and more about the effects of the bonding with humans and the rituals involved. Uziel knew the ritual. He must have erred on purpose, she thinks, discovering that not only must the sacrifice of a human blood relative be made, but that relative must also be of virgin blood. He had this girl kill her mother. He knew he had to have a relative, and yet he chose a sacrifice who could never possibly meet the full requirements. Exhaustingly, Inyana's hand moves over the map of the United States, while she chants a deep and guttural string of Sakari phrases, used as a scrying incantation. Having narrowed her search dozens of times from the entire globe down to the Western Hemisphere, to the North American continent, and further down until now her search is focused on the state of Indiana and the American Midwest. Her scrying brings her closer than she has ever been before to locating her brother's potential host. My brother's vessel lies in this Indiana territory, Inyana says aloud, sweat covering her face. With the loss of shine in her hair, the wetness causes it to hang down in thin strings. Her hopes reside in locating Yamura's intended vessel first, and killing him so that her brother has no chance of ever walking again in this realm. If she is able to eliminate his vessel and all of his acolytes, then she would be free to do whatever she wished with his imprisoned spirit. Several images of implanting Yamura's essence into various farm animals rise foremost in her thoughts. A swine would suit that traitor best, I believe. She dwells on a called-up daydream of a fat pink pig, squealing in terror as she chases it around like a gleeful child. Upon catching the pig, she slowly dismembers it before preparing a feast with its remains. A goblet of fresh blood rests in her hands, as servants bring the roasted prize out for her amusement at dinner. Few endings would be more fitting for you, for what you have cost me. Blood drips onto the map, splattering onto Alabama and parts of Georgia. Inyana slowly reaches up, touching her nose with hesitation as she is abruptly snapped out of her daydreams. Ever weakening as the Sakari spirit drains nutrients from her body, faster than they can be produced, Leora's haggard form grows closer and closer to death each day. Without that special quality possessed by select humans that allows for them to bond with a Sakari or other spirit, avoiding slow decay, the young woman's time is almost up. The delusion she had of ever gaining the prestige or power of the great Queen Inyana faded long ago after each trip to the mirror reminded her of the steady decline. A blood relative of my brother's vessel shall be my only guarantee of successful bonding, Inyana tells herself. As soon as I locate this perfect host, I shall kill it and take for myself one of its relatives. I will shortly possess a body that will not rot beneath my great power. Leora can still hear Inyana's words and thoughts, and her disdain of an unworthy host still stings. Giving up not only her life for the belief, but taking that of your own flesh and blood leaves the young woman in a constant misery and state of regret. She has damned herself for what? Being this creature's temporary meat suit until she can locate a better one? Would anyone willingly give up their whole life for that? The hope of relief and the allure of power swayed her decisions, and now Leora must spend every conscious moment in torment of them. Judas received silver for his betrayal. Jews that sold out their own to the Nazis gained gold and pardons. But what did she get for sacrificing her own mother? Kaina's pleas for help and the disbelief in her eyes are never gone from Leora's thoughts. "Bring me the finest dress you can locate," Inyana orders her servants. The mixture of magically enslaved humans and highly devoted Sakari partial bloods rush out of the room to happily serve their queen. Many of the men under the influence of her Badare al-Controle spell have bodies even more disheveled-looking than that of their master. While Inyana tries to cater to her vanity and hide her body's decay as much as possible, no inkling for personal grooming or hygiene is possessed by her slaves. Often the men go days without showering or eating, and more than a few have died from malnutrition and illness while under her power. Inyana walks over to a hanging mirror fixed to the wall of the office formerly belonging to Riccolo Tamahen. She feels her sunken cheeks and her receding lips with an index finger, and winces at the sight. I was once the most beautiful being in creation. What has happened to me? Her thoughts are cut off abruptly as a wave of nausea washes over her, and she fights to hold back the bile rising in her throat. Feeling lightheaded, she braces herself against the desk. The space around her begins to warp and shift until a dimensional fissure with a sound not unlike a zipper coming undone appears. A shining light floods the room as out steps a tall figure clad in black and golden armor. White blonde hair hangs down to his shoulders, and a black sword composed of diamond hangs at his hip alongside a golden chakram ring. "Welcome back, my lady," Cedrion says as the fissure seals behind him. Unlike humans or Sakari, Yazata can pass back and forth through the spaces between dimensions, even when they are barricaded through magic. "Was your nap enjoyable?" The nausea passes, and Inyana instantly replaces the feeling with disgust. The Yazata named Cedrion was a frequent guest of her mate Marduk in the royal palace. It was due to many of his preparations that their attack on the Kishar realm, also called Earth, was launched. An attack that ended in complete failure and her imprisonment. "What do you want, foul?" Inyana growls, straightening herself and regaining her composure. Cedrion opens a cabinet on the other side of the room and removes a bottle of wine. Drinking directly from the bottle, the Yazata wipes his mouth with his forearm and grins. "Uziel always did have the best indulgences." He finishes the bottle before waving his hand to open one of the desk drawers and levitates a cigar case over to him. "I sensed your spirit returned to this plane some time ago, but alas, I was indisposed and could not pull myself away." "You have never appeared without hidden intentions." Inyana taps a button on the telephone system that alerts her guards to trouble. Peltier and 4 of his best men enter the room with their guns fixed upon the Yazatan visitor. Glancing at the men, Cedrion grins. His senses are far more attuned than that of other beings, and he can see the inhuman energy mingled with that of the spiritual nature swirling around the guards. "Sakati? Surrounding yourself with half-breeds?" Inyana smiles as the guards surround Cedrion. "With a single incantation, I can burn the demonic taint from their bodies and leave them quivering heaps of meat," he warns, cracking his neck and rotating his shoulders in their sockets. "Or you can call your dogs off and allow us to speak like 2 rational adults." Knowing the full power of the former captain-class Seraphim Yazata, Inyana nods and sends her guards back into the hallway to wait. "Why have you come?" Cedrion walks past Inyana and sits down in Uziel's former chair. propping his feet on the desk. "It's a real shame you had to go and kill Uziel. He may have been a little zealous, but he provided me with lots of useful intel in this realm." Years later, Cedrion can still smell Uziel's blood on the floor, and he can see the faded stain through the layers of cleaning supplies and new carpet. He shrugs and looks back over at Inyana. "While you were confined, time progressed naturally. You do realize that, don't you?" Inyana is quiet for a moment, pushing back painful thoughts and images. "Yes, by my estimates, 10,000 years have passed in this realm. And thereby roughly 1,500 years have passed in Averno. Your kind may live long, but unlike me, you are not immortal. Most beings you have ever known have succumbed to age and passed over to the shores of the rivers beyond." Cedrion grins as he continues. He sees the sadness and pain in Inyana's eyes as she remembers the faces of her 3 children and Marduk. "That is, except for your brother and the Grand General Hui. You need not remind me that my mate is dead while my traitorous kin survives. I've expended every resource available to track down his vessel, but I've had little success." She recalls that Ymir's betrayal led to her imprisonment and the closing of the invasion's pathway. "Who now rules the capital city?" "The descendants of your eldest, Edior, have maintained power without lapse. Many wars have since waged, but in no small part to the assistance of myself and Gudriel, your bloodline continues on." Relief washes over Inyana as she learns that her offspring have persevered despite having been left without their mother after she left to lead the invasion force. "Your youngest, Mizrain, took over the priesthood, and her descendants have created a powerful city in which thousands journey to pay homage to Nyarlathotep and learn spellcraft. She mated with the head priest, a skilled mage by the name of Ezion, and produced 3 little spawn, just like dear old mom and dad. Her middle child, and eldest daughter, Tirzah, rules the eastern lands with her mate, Lord Thymus of Shemeeti. Mizrain lived a very long and full life. She only recently passed to the other shore of the great river. Shall I continue?" Inyana doubts that Cedrion came to merely catch her up on her continued genealogy, but the temptation is too great to hear about the lives of the children she never got to see grow up. "Let's see. Because of the joining of Tirzah and Thymus, the Central and Eastern empires have aligned into a single, unrivaled country. Your middleborn, Salah, became a formidable Grand General in service to his brother Edior. I fought side by side with him many times on the battlefield, and was with him in the moments when he was finally felled. He lived 400 long years, and his grandson, Naftai, rules the city of Sarug in the west, which he conquered from Lord Terah. It was Terah's own son Ursus who slew Salah in retribution, but the city was held. Lord Ursus is the Western Territory's current ruler, and is Central's biggest threat. The second son of Edior, Midian, is in his 4th year of rule after the death of his elder brother Peleg, who died mateless and without spawn. I have provided Midian and his predecessors wise counsel. The capital has thrived. For that I am grateful to you," Inyana says with sincerity. The sadness in her heart from her offspring all being passed on without her being around for the majority of their lives is lessened only by the knowledge that their own blood has persevered through the generations. She is also troubled by the fact that she recognizes the name Ursus. In her time, Ursus was already making a name for himself as the vicious warlord son of an equally brutal ruler. "I do not know how, but Lord Ursus has also learned of your revival, and has begun to make attempts at alliances with the southern lord, a battle-hardened Nekokai by the name of Ascana. He hopes that together they can swarm the capital before Midian can join his might with that of yourself and Hui. When you return, tell my grandson that I shall revive Grand General Hui, and together we will crush the Western Lord and all of his forces. I will then finish what I began before my imprisonment." Cedrion removes his feet from the desk and leans forward in surprise. You still intend to conquer Kishar? The humans of this era are weak-minded and easy to manipulate. I will be able to subjugate them quickly. Do not underestimate your brother or his vessel. The boy is Vaetir, and will only become stronger as time progresses. Hearing of Cedrion's knowledge of Ymura and his hosts piques Inyana's interest. You know of his vessel? So he already walks in this world? Cedrion nods slowly. For a full day now he has been released. He is still stretching his legs, so to speak, but his destructive power is no less impressive. I had hoped to kill his vessel before Ymura could ever take possession. Nevertheless, I will still destroy them before this boy can mature his abilities. My traitorous brother will burn inside of his vessel and experience true agony. Because of him, I have missed the lives of my spawn, and am now mateless and childless. He will pay for taking that away from me. Nodding, Cedrion stands and places a golden ring on the desk. Inlaid on the ring is a green gemstone of Moldavite. Yazatan glyphs are carved into the face of the stone. This is a Warna ring. It will mask your presence from the detection of all those who seek to harm you. We Yazata wear the Warna for reconnaissance and assassination, to keep ourselves hidden from others of our kind, and the Devilnay. Neither Ymura nor his vessel will be able to sense you, unless you make yourself known to them. Inyana takes the ring and clutches it tightly in her palm. Waves of ancient and powerful magic can be felt through the small circle. The Warna were produced in small number by the Yazatan magicians, called the Sangame, with assistance from the most skilled of the Aralim. Together, the wisest Yazata were able to infuse magic and their own essences into the rings to be able to manipulate how they are perceived, even by others of their kind. Please tell Midian and my other kin that I shall soon come to stand by their side where I belong, Inyana whispers, turning the ring over in her palm several times. Cedrion nods and reopens the dimensional fissure that only his kind may pass through safely. I first intend to see Ymura and his vessel with my own eyes, and reclaim the Book of the Black Earth from his acolytes. I will return shortly and give you their location. Averno, 10,000 years ago. Inyana walks down the hallways of the royal palace in an elaborate purple robe decorated with red and green gemstones. At her side, the young princess Mizraim attempts to keep up with the strides of her longer-legged mother. Where are your brothers? Inyana asks, not slowing her pace. Salah is with Uncle Ymura training, and Edior is with father, and the Yazata in the throne room. The queen grinds her teeth together at the thought of her eldest fraternizing with the two angelic creatures. She doesn't understand why Marduk tolerates their continued coming and goings in the capital. She is thankful for their aid, but without the Yazata, her mate would not currently be king, and she would be nothing more than a princess and a priestess. Despite their involvement in her father's assassination and Marduk's rise to power, she does not trust Cedrion or his quiet subordinate Gadriel. Why was I not summoned, she wonders. More than just his mate, Inyana serves as one of Marduk's chief strategists, and her magical abilities make her as powerful as any other sitting on his war council. Reading her mother's frustration, Mizraim takes her hand and stops. Inyana stumbles, not expecting the girl to come to a halt. Let the boys play their politics and war games, Mizraim smiles devilishly. Inyana sees her own youth in the girl. Take me out to the courtyard and teach me a new spell. You have not shown me any new ones in ages, mother. I was no more than 10 myself when I was taught my first spells by the priestesses. Inyana feels pride in her daughter, knowing that she too will be powerful one day. She will not grow up to be a weak female to be enslaved or abused. She will be strong and fierce. She will be a leader and rule over thousands, either as a queen or as a high priestess. Yes, that is a wonderful idea. My father overlooked me as his firstborn and passed my birthright to Ymura. I will make sure that Mizraim is given every opportunity to succeed as her brothers. I will not be as easy on you this time. You are older now, and I will expect more. Excitedly, Mizraim claps her hands together and nods. what is it exactly that Marduk is discussing with those winged vermin? There, Gadriel says, pointing to a spot on the map rolled out across the table before them. The Western Army has formed an encampment here in Palassu. Marduk stares at the map, noting the small distance of 200 miles between Palassu and themselves in the capital. They can make that trek in only a week or two. How many? 1,400 or so, Zedran replies. A modest excursion. A full regiment should be able to wipe them out with minimal losses. The Yazata shifts, glancing further across the map. Semi-Mulki, the western capital city. I have a feeling that this is nothing more than a ruse. Frowning, Marduk looks away from the map. Lord Terra is not inexperienced. In his own lands he has crushed many uprisings and united his territory under a single house. His forces outnumber ours 3-1, so why would he send such a modest number thus far into central lands? He knows that you would not miss the opportunity to strike at him. A stronger force is most likely moving up from the south, or testing themselves against the northern elements. Either way, they hope to catch the capital with one or more of its legendary defenders away. Marduk scowls, resenting the reputations of his underlings as such fine warriors, when it is he who wins the wars with his strategy, not they. They call it rightly so. I would have dispatched Yamura in either Hui or Gishbar with him to crush the enemy. Marduk admits. He sees that the Western Lord's reading of his actions, without actually making them yet. They underestimate you, Father, Edior interrupts. They think that you hide behind Uncle and the Grand General, but you and Mother are as strong as they. Marduk glances at the Yazata, who say nothing to steer the boy clear of his flawed logic. And with Lord Cedrion and Gadriel here with us, there's no force in the world that could take this city. He is right about his mother and the Yazata, but I am no warrior, Marduk thinks in frustration. His pride makes him unable to admit this weakness to his offspring. Unfortunately, young prince, Gadriel and I must attend to other matters in Kishar, Cedron says, mussing the Sakari's reddish-brown hair. Are the humans really that terrible? None of the Sakari have ever seen a human before, not since the days of their distant ancestors, back when the two worlds were joined as one. They are much like the Machuchans. They consume resources and reproduce in alarming fashion. And what do we do when the Machuchan populations explode, young prince? Cedrion asks Edior, referencing a large carnivorous rodent that frequently arises to plague the country. Harvest their numbers until they are manageable again. Cedrion nods. Soon I believe that we will be able to solve this problem together, he adds, looking over to Marduk. You have aided me greatly numerous times, Marduk says, putting his hand on the Yazata's shoulder. I count you as a friend, Cedrion. I owe my very crown to you. And the conquest of Kishar will strengthen your might beyond that of any ruler before, Cedrion smiles. Elsewhere, the youngest son and middle child of Inyana and Marduk repeats a series of drills as his uncle looks on. Salah throws several precise roundhouse kicks before pivoting with a series of alternating head and mid-level jabs. He continues this dance of striking and pivoting in perpetual motion. Was it really so long ago that I was in this position? Ymra thinks, maintaining his observance of his nephew's daily training. Father was still alive the last day that I trained with Master Ashkelon, 75 years ago before Marduk's usurpation. King Shamashtu ruled central Averno. Shamashtu was well liked by his subjects and known widely as an even-tempered diplomat. Few wars ever waged during his 130-year reign. He had working alliances with the other 3 Sakari warlords, as well as being the only leader on good terms with the often hostile and reclusive northern Sabati tribe. Envoy of the Sabati, Ashkelon, has taken great honor after being asked by Shamashtu to take on his only son as his protege and train him in combat. For 2 decades, Ashkelon trained the young prince, molding him into not only a powerful warrior, but also a master tactician. Trained to think and act almost instinctively, Ymra performed on the battlefield like no other. Ashkelon made great efforts to push his boundaries at each stage, making him ever greater. Salah has that same passion that I once had. Before his father's death, Yamura had long dreamed of serving at his side as Grand General and Chief Military Advisor, until the day that he would be named to take over the throne. That birthright and legacy was shattered and torn away from him the day his sister's mate betrayed Shamashtu and had him murdered. Yamura still remembers the events vividly. The four faces inside of the throne room, while his father lay face down in his own blood, a dagger thrust into his back, remains burned into his subconscious forever. Marduk, Hui, and the two Yazata that served sometimes as his advisors, Cedrion and Gadriel, the four who murdered his father, as well as his own mate Eliel, will one day pay for their actions. The death of Eliel pains him so much because it was completely unnecessary. What had his mate done to deserve to be killed by them? Had she walked in on their betrayal and tried to alert someone? With their deaths, the light within Yamura was all but extinguished. The world became a dark and hateful place in which no one deserved mercy or quarter. Everyone now was an enemy, and all he cared about was gone. Yet here this youth stands before me, carrying my bloodline, and reflecting so much of me at that same age. Yamura does care about his nephews and niece, the fears that one day they too will become power-hungry like their parents, and stop at nothing to rule. They will become ruthless, and trample anyone in their path, including family. Even with all of his training, Yamura does not think that he will have a lasting effect on the boy's future self. He hopes that he is wrong. Years of servitude in Marduk's army has beaten down his optimism and left him cold. That is enough for now, Salah, Yamura says, seeing his sister standing near the palace entrance. She scowls at him with disapproval, hating that her mate ever agreed to allow Yamura to train their son. What is it, uncle? Salah asks, wiping the sweat off his face with a rag. Did I make another mistake? No, you are progressing very well. Your speed and reaction time are in perfect unison. Tomorrow I want you to show me that you have been practicing the black flame technique that I showed you. Salah nods. But why are we finished for today? We have not been out here but a few hours. I believe that your mother needs you, and I will not interfere with those matters. I will see you tomorrow, Yamura replies, patting his nephew on the head and giving his sister a dirty look before leaving out into the city. Come here, Salah. We have things to discuss about your future, Inyana says, beckoning her son to come. She watches her brother leave, praying that he has not been training her son poorly, will be killed in battle just to hurt her. Rockland, Indiana, August 7th, 1998. Landing behind the Rockland Sheriff's Department, Master Torres Forgeron regains his human form and enters the building confidently. He prefers to travel in the guise of a large black crow, as it is not out of the ordinary to see those hanging around in places. In human form, however, the large flowing cape of the Master Magician makes him stand out as a strange escapee from a Renaissance fair. May I help you, sir? The elderly receptionist asks as the man strides through the doors. She frowns upon seeing the strange man, and instinctively her right hand moves to her radio in the case of an emergency. You need to remove that, cloak and place any metallic objects you have on your person in one of the plastic bins. Gazing straight through her, Forgeron raises his index fingers and quickly clenches his fists as he visualizes the sigils for the intended spell. Vidare al controle. Ruth stiffens, locked into Forgeron's mental grip. Her eyes glaze over, and her expression slackens to a near comatose state. Drool runs down the woman's chin and drips onto several prisoner transfer papers at her desk. I require the address of Elian Schaefer, He is one of the victims of your so-called demonic killer. Ruth nods, unable to form the words. Even though the spell is frowned upon for use by magicians, when it is used, the target is not supposed to be so forcefully controlled. Forgeron ignores the caution, instead seizing complete subjugation, even if it damages their ability to talk. The woman turns her attention to the bluish glow of her computer screen, and with a few quick keystrokes, she looks back up with the information. She mumbles, and Forgeron hisses in frustration, dialing back his control in order for her to be able to speak. 195 North Keaton Avenue, Ruth says robotically. 2 uniformed officers enter the lobby from a hallway and approach the strange man, their hands sliding to the straps of their holstered sidearms. Can we help you, sir? Forgeron snaps his fingers, releasing Ruth from his spell. She blinks several times in a daze. Sir? No, I believe you have been helpful enough. Good day. The magician turns, exiting the building as mysteriously as he came. Crossing the street and ducking beneath the rows of yellow caution tape, Master Forgeron enters the crime scene home of his former student Elian Schaefer. The electricity has been cut, and the house is dark and filled with stale air. Forgeron summons a small light elemental and infuses it with spirit energy to cause it to animate before him. The light flutters ahead of the magician, illuminating his path. Most of Schaefer's belongings have been boxed up, with numerous items carried away for evidence. Unsure whether the police would consider an old Yazatin tome relevant to the case, Forgeron continues his search in hopes of finding the Book of the Black Earth. Family photos remain hanging on the walls, reminders of happier times past. Elian stands smiling with his arms around his daughters, and poses that never again will be repeated. Checking his bookcases and shelves thoroughly, Forgeron is unable to turn up any ancient writings or Yazatin connections. Books on archaeology and martial arts comprise the bulk of Schaefer's collection, with stray copies of novels by Stephen King, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Michael Crichton. Moving through the house, he comes to Elian's bedroom and begins to look through his dressers and desk. Forgeron pulls the last drawer from Elian's dresser, hurling it across the room and scattering boxer shorts and unmatched socks across the carpet. He hisses in frustration, hammering his fists onto the top of the furniture and splintering off several large strips of the wood. Where the hell did he store it? Was he foolish enough to allow Yamura to take it with him? Glimpsing a faded green robe hanging from the wall, the magician sighs with painful memories. Images of his teenage pupil struggling with conjuring spells, and them exploding in his own face from lack of focus and control, brings a sad smile to the man's lips. Reckless fool. How did you ever believe that you could control a Sakari? The thought of ash smeared across the teen's face from another unsuccessful Aginestra spell, while his master laughs at him, causes Forgeron to shake the smile away, and the memories tied to it. You still had so much left to learn, but you thought you knew it all. Now you know nothing but eternal sleep. Idiot. Forgeron pulls the robe from the wall and clenches it tightly, before striding across the room, with the fabric still in his grasp. James Swan sits at his computer, tapping his fingers impatiently as he waits for the digital image of the long-legged beauty to load. The Rockland coroner is the only living soul present in the city morgue, surrounded in the dimly lit room only by numerous chilled corpses. A flutter catches his attention, and he quickly exits out of his browser in case one of the higher-ranking city officials that sign his paychecks has shown up for an unannounced visit. The high-profile nature of several of his cadavers means that it would not be too surprising should officials wish to personally learn some of the more gruesome details themselves. Covered by thin white sheets, the cold and lifeless bodies of several of Rockland's finest lie on metal dissection tables. "Who's there?" Swan asks, looking around the empty room. None of his deceased companions respond. Swan shrugs the noise off due to his imagination. Many times he has had strange daydreams of the corpses sitting up and conversing with him, telling him funny stories, or just nodding patiently as they listen to him ramble on about television shows and other things that interest him. Other times his imagination has run a darker course, sending terrible images of the dead moaning in hunger and trying to claw their way at him for sustenance. Suddenly he catches a pair of red eyes in his peripheral vision, low to the floor. The eyes slowly raise until they are at the level of a man. "The body of Elian Schaefer," Master Forgeron says as he emerges from the shadows. "Where is it?" Swan trembles at the sound of the strange man's voice. The look in his eyes is equally disturbing, as they possess no discernible emotion or intention. "Unless you're a cop, you have no business down here." Swan tries to put up a tough and professional front, but his voice shakes in fear. Sighing, Forgeron begins to call forth the magical sigils within his mind necessary for completing the complicated and frowned upon mind control spell, Vidari al Controle. "Body?" James repeats, blinking several times as if trying to recall some long-forgotten fact. Forgeron pushes his will over the man further until he can no longer feel any resistance. "I have his body right here." He moves over to a drawer labeled 37A and pulls the handle. Elian's body emerges on a flat metal slab, covered from the chest down in a white sheet. Forgeron can hardly believe this pale, overweight thing was once his student. Has it been so long, or has life just been exceptionally cruel to Elian Schaefer? Elian Schaefer, cause of death is severe trauma to the heart. Chest cavity was ripped open, exposing the heart to damage. Remains of the heart were collected from the wall and floor of the martial arts studio his body was discovered in, Swan says. "Yamura tore his heart out," Forgeron whispers, shuddering. "What a gruesome beast." Forgeron summons the symbols in his mind for a complex spell that enables the caster temporarily enhanced perception. Spinning the symbols so that they arrange into the correct pattern, he finally locks them into place before feeding them energy and giving life to the spell. The magician's eyes glow supernaturally as he scans over the body of his former apprentice. Lingering traces of the fire element run from Elian's core, down along his arms and into his hands. "At least you put up a fight, old friend," Forgeron whispers sadly. He continues to study the body, hoping for some kind of break that will help him to locate the Book of the Black Earth before the Yazata can. "This isn't working," he mutters with frustration. "Was anyone else brought in at the same time as him?" "One of his students, Mika Glaus, IMPD Lieutenant Dwayne Rollins. 2 men found in a nearby alley, identified as Eddie Baron and Kevin Thomas." Looking over the other bodies, Forgeron sees nothing that furthers his search. The young Mika Glaus shows no signs of magic, and Forgeron is led to believe in sadness that the boy didn't even know how to spellcast. With no elemental pathways opened up in his core, the poor soul stood no chance against a powerful creature such as Yamura. The control spell over James Swan begins to wane, and the man starts to act confused. Forgeron again extends his influence to wash over him and smother his independence. Was this all? Were there no other victims of the young killer? More cadavers are exposed, bringing the official body count to over 14. Fordron sees faint waves of black energy on most of the bodies, but cannot decipher a spell formula, if one was even used. Elian Schaefer's blood. Bring it to me. The coroner shows the magician the large vat where the blood of cadavers is pumped into and later disposed of. Fordron curses, knowing that the fluids have mixed together with the others, and it's impossible to split them apart. Surely you have individual samples of DNA comparison. The coroner nods, pointing to a walk-in freezer. Fordron walks into the unit immediately, feeling chilled. Drawing the fire elemental up into his mind, he focuses on the symbol until his body begins to warm. Arranged in alphabetical order, Fordron discovers the blood work for Elian and removes a single vial, the 6 stored there for him, arranging the symbols for awareness and enlightenment with the elements of spirit and dominion. Fordron casts a spell on the blood sample that will revive its owner's memories upon consumption. Ingesting the ensorcelled blood and wincing, he fights back the urge to vomit. Tiny sparks of memories ignite, pinging around the magician's head like fireworks. He experiences Elian's last moments at the hands of Ymura and the dying thoughts he had of his daughters. Fordron shakes the spell out of his mind as the memories of death begin to sear into him from Elian's final mortal experience. He did not have the book at the end, Fordron says, cursing to himself in anger and narrowly stopping himself from smashing all of the blood samples in his fury. Releasing James from the control spell, Fordron leaves him in a deep slumber before exiting the morgue. The only remaining possibility is that the book was seized by the police as evidence and held at the police station. Frustrated that he must go back to the sheriff's department, thankful he is likely only a single step away from getting his hands on the most powerful book ever left for man to read by the Yazata, he returns to his searching. With his funds dried up quicker than anticipated due to the continued need for caffeine, Jake is forced to contemplate how to move forward in resisting Ymura against the increasing pull of sleep. Several times, while staring out the window, watching the trees pass, their forms blurring together in a streak, Jake's eyes would become heavy. As if weighed down by anvils clipped to his eyelids, they would pull against his will. Despite trying his best to resist, the withdrawal of caffeine made the mental fatigue hundreds of times worse than before. The other passengers on the bus begin to stare at Jake's body trembles, losing his struggle at last. The stares turn into screams as blood explodes from their chests and splatters on the seats ahead. Eyes and mouths run with crimson, and deep gashes swell from dark red across slit throats. A booming laughter echoes throughout the bus as shadows begin to come together and coalesce into a vaguely humanoid form. "You have lost to me, boy," Ymura laughs as his shadows start to resemble his full Sakari form. The darkness takes on a blue color, and long horns grow from the back of the creature's head and spiral back in on themselves. Long black hair hangs down in a wild mess, unruly and shining, as if dripping with oil. "There's no way," Jake whispers, watching as Ymura takes shape before him. Everyone but them now lies dead. The floor is slick with dark blood. "How did you escape my body?" Even as he speaks, Jake doubts this reality. Logically, he cannot rationalize Ymura's existence as a separate being, or the sudden deaths of all aboard the bus. He looks around at the bus driver, seeing that he too is slumped over with his head against the window, blood still running slowly from his ears. The bus has not crashed, or even swerved, despite having no driver, and in that moment Jake realizes the even grimmer situation he is now faced with. "Damn it! Jake screams, biting down on his right forearm as hard as he can, until his mouth fills with metallic-tasting warmth. The sharp pain and taste of blood causes his senses to snap back to attention. The oily sheen that has spread throughout his hair begins to recede, and his elongated fangs return to normal. Another minute, and Yamura would have gained enough control to suppress Jake's consciousness and become the dominant personality. "No sleeping on the job," Jake whispers to himself. The teen's heart still pounds in his chest from the shock and terror of nearly losing Yamura on the world once again. The pain in his arm is strong, and he is forced to hold his hand against it to slow the bleeding. He knows that he must keep pressure applied and prevent himself from bleeding all over everyone. The last thing he needs would be for someone to call the police because some strange teenager is biting himself and bleeding on people. "Your failure is refreshing," Yamura mocks. "I was so very close to wresting control from you without even having to try. Despite all of your grandiose declarations, you were unable to conquer even sleep. If you cannot overcome the simplest of your human needs, how can you ever hope to subjugate my power?" Jake cannot even form a response. His shame is too great, and he knows that this simple failure could have cost everyone. Without caffeine, he must come up with an alternate method to stay awake and resist the compulsion for sleep. "All it takes is once," Yamura laughs. "Now I know that you cannot resist much longer. I have seen your limit, and my victory is guaranteed. My patience has rewarded me, while your weakness shall soon become your ultimate demise. All that you care about will wither and die beneath my power. I will begin with your mother, then your aunts and uncles, and work my way to my grand revenge against your cousin Rusty and that witch Danny. The two of them shall suffer greater than any before me ever has. The strongest of Danny's spells will be useless against the damage that I inflict upon them. I will burn their bodies to ash, so that not even anchoring their souls will revive them. All of this will be your doing. Your weakness will be the direct cause of their deaths." The pain of Yamura's accusations hurts worse than the still bleeding bite on his arm. The Sakari and Jake both know the outcome that is inevitable between them. But while Yamura merely waits for the chance, Jake struggles in vain to fight against it. "Nothing you do will change the future. I will regain control of your body, and I will allow you to watch helplessly as I dismember everyone you have ever loved. My wrath against your family and friends will know no bounds. At last, when the final body rests upon the ground, will I then put an end to your suffering and remove your soul from me once more." Yamura grins, baring his phantom fangs. "This time, I will not merely place your discarded spirit within the pages of some accursed book. I will send your spirit beyond the great rivers of the afterlife, from whence you will never return. The world will be mine without intervention from you, Rusty, or anyone else." A servant approaches, carrying a thick stack of papers. In the files are bios of each and every living relative of Yamura's vessel, Jake Stewart, that could be located. Extensive searches have been performed, and vast resources expended to compile this comprehensive list. Inyana immediately separates the files into two stacks, male and female. She loathes the idea of ever inhabiting a man's body, and rules them out as vessels without hesitation. Narrowed significantly, she now spends much more time carefully evaluating each candidate and arranging their files in a desired order. At first, she chooses based solely on limiting factors, such as looks, vitality, and physical conditioning. On the surface, these qualities are essential for her host, but without a bloodline suited for possession, she could end up with another vessel like Lior that will eventually deteriorate. Annabelle Cassandra Stewart, formerly Williams, age 37, mother to Jake Stewart, closest female blood relative, active in athletics until age 18. Physical conditioning has slipped significantly. I do not believe that she would be the best choice for combat. Despite the drawbacks, Inyana still currently places Anne at the top of her stack before moving on to the next file. She prefers to find a host that is a close relation, but still worthy enough to house her grace and beauty, and be useful in battle should it come down to blows against her brother, now that he has already been unleashed. The former queen's arrogance and vanity has not diminished in her years of imprisonment, and she still places a high value on appearance. Lydia Marie Williams, formerly Reinhardt, age 46, maternal grandmother to Jake Stewart. Spent a significant amount of her youth in the care of church hospitals for treatment of psychiatric illnesses. There is very little content in this folder compared to the others, and Inyana wonders why so much of Jake's grandmother's history has been hidden from her slaves. Susan Corrine Rigsby, formerly Stewart, age 38, paternal aunt of Jake Stewart, small physical frame, but excellent eyesight and reflexes. Says that she was a national champion archer in her youth, and is extremely proficient with firearms. Inyana moves Sue's profile up in the stack, but still desires a younger and more fit host if possible. Brooke Ashley Tyndall, formerly Stewart, age 33, paternal first cousin to Jake Stewart. Yes, this one is ideal. She is both in her prime and very attractive as far as humans go. She looks through several more files, but other than Jake's other first cousin, Dawn Tamara Williams, none others catch her interest. Dawn is too young, however, at only 10, and beyond her the list is mostly second cousins, through 4 times removed relatives. She fears the bloodline would be far too diluted beyond that of a first cousin, and makes that her cutoff point. Lior's spirit is far more terrified than it's ever been in years. On one hand, the long stretch of hell she has lived will finally come to an end, but with it will come her true damnation. In death, she knows that because of her selfish actions, she will be cursed to spend eternity in fiery torment. She cannot bring herself to pray for mercy after what she has done. She ignored the same pleas from her own mother, and that pain is overwhelming. The best she can hope for is that all the major religions are wrong, and oblivion is all that awaits her in death. If she had the strength or will to fight back against her oppressor, she would try to prevent her from ruining another woman's life. As it currently stands, all that remains of Lior Nadav is so compartmentalized that she cannot influence a single thought or action of her former body. "What about the men?" Peltier asks, picking up a stack of files and glancing through with little interest. "There are candidates here that will give you a durable body, with lots of stamina and fighting experience." Inyana makes a sound similar to gagging before responding to her head of security. "In my youth I studied all manner of magic, in order to be groomed as a priestess of our faith. Among the spells I learned was transformation. I excelled at becoming animals, or changing my face or body to become an entirely new being. In these studies, however, I was also forced to occasionally transform into male animals, or give myself male features or anatomy. The resulting feelings were repulsive. I felt claustrophobic in a male body, as if the alien flesh were suffocating me. I could not stand to be trapped within a human male vessel. I would go mad. Apologies. It's just that none of these women are warriors worthy of your power. Could you really face your brother in the guise of a housewife? Yamura's vessel has the ability to sense and manifest energy, and is a skilled young martial artist, according to all of our reports. The body matters not so long as it is operational. It is my fighting instincts and experience that will be drawn upon, not those of my host. Peltier pushes the issue, believing Inyana's ego is blinding her to his critical observations. Would Yamura not be able to conserve his own energy within a body already capable of battle, as he would not to be forced to draw upon his own reserves? Inyana scoffs, dismissing his words. My brother and his host would have to work in tandem in order to pull that off. Do you honestly believe that any vessel would be that cooperative? Peltier does not back down. If both of their lives were at jeopardy against a foe that neither of them could defeat alone, I do believe a mutual interest of self-preservation would be possible. Impulsively, Inyana's hand darts out in anger and snatches the man by his throat. Choking, Peltier claws at her fingers as ineffectively as an infant would to struggle against a full-grown adult. Do you still doubt my strength? Inyana asks, squeezing until her hand closes around the man's trachea and his body becomes limp in her grasp. She releases her grip quickly, ashamed that she has allowed her pride to ignite her vibrant temper. Peltier collapses to the floor unmoving, and she is forced to acknowledge she has killed one of her own, like some petty feudal lord. She calls for several Sakati guards to enter the office and remove the head security's body. Please see to it that his family receives the proper benefits, and his funeral is extravagant. I should not have killed him like that. The regret in Inyana's voice is apparent, but none dare comment on it. 3 of Inyana's true followers enter behind the guards. These women are acolytes of the Sakari Queen, and have worshipped her for years. Revered as a deity by many cultures over the millennia, Inyana's exploits have passed into legend, and the mysticism surrounding her fated revival have spawned many young devotees, each one hopeful that one day they would become one with their god and serve as her vessel. The plane is fueled and ready, my queen, says Santia Ramos, a 26-year-old woman from Mexico. In her country, an underground sect once worshipped Inyana as Madre del Azul, or the Blue Mother. Somehow, over time, the actual knowledge that her skin was in fact a light shade of purple rather than blue was lost. The idea of the blue-skinned deities further complicates legends, as ancient Mayans also worshipped similar beings that had no connection whatsoever to the Sakari. Make sure that the half-breeds are fully armed and prepared for anything. The possibility that my brother has full control of his vessel is high. Yamura was a traitorous coward, but he always was resourceful and cunning. If anyone could discover a way to take his host as his own, it would be him. What of the other possible locations Yamura's vessel might flee to? Santia asks. Inyana looks her acolytes over. All of the women are young and beautiful. They are all equally as intelligent, and this fact endears them to their queen more so. She sees each of them as being the closest representations of herself that humanity could produce. In the time that she has known them, she would even go so far to say that she cares for them. Not as one might care for their own offspring or parent, but more like the care one would possess for a valued family pet. Emil will go to speak with Antonio Khan, the former employer of the boy's missing father. In the event that Yamura is unable to suppress his host's spirit, the boy may push to get revenge on the man or men responsible for his father's disappearance. Inyana explains, singling out the golden-haired muse Emile Roche as her liaison to Khan. The man is rumored to be arrogant and ruthless, but she suspects that even a man of such wealth and pride could not resist the sheer sexuality and power exuded by the young Emile. Kara, Inyana says as she addresses the 3rd acolyte, you will accompany me to the United States and the hometown of my brother's vessel. With my pure blood enhancing your already dormant senses, we will quickly determine if Ymira is still present there. Kara Gambella lacks the brilliant mind of Santia, nor does she exude the pure and raw sexual fire of Emil. What Kara does possess, however, is that she is the only one of them that is also a Sakati, unlike many of Inyana's security detail, and with most security detachments the higher of their kind. Kara is a natural Sakati, rather than a genetically modified human. Nearly all humans that claim to be of Sakari only that, blood. Infusing oneself with Sakari blood can imbue a person with enhanced senses and abilities, yet it also requires regular injections and create a chemical dependence that is difficult to break. A true Sakati is one who can trace a Sakari ancestor in their ancient lineage. Yes, my queen, Kara says with elation, kneeling and lowering her head in reverence. If Ymira has left the city, Emil will be in place to utilize the resources of Khan's vast infrastructure to intercept him anywhere in the country, Santia says, adding her own observations. And with me ready to strike should he attempt to make contact with his grandparents or his fighting instructor, he will never be able to escape us. All of you must take great care not to fail in your tasks, Inyana says, opening up her right wrist with a single claw. Dark blood begins to pour forth. The three of you will no longer be my acolytes from this moment on. You three will become my own blood. She extends her arm, instructing each woman to take it and ingest her royal fluid. Kara embraces Inyana's arm first, gently pressing her lips to the wound and drinking. Santia is next, taking only enough until she feels a heat growing in her core and blossoming outward, akin to an orgasm. Inyana is forced to push Emil away after the woman bites at the wound and refuses to stop lapping the blood up with excited fervor. Light-headed and sweating, Inyana steps away and visualizes the Yazatan's glyphs, needed for casting a spell of healing. That power you feel deep within you is me. As long as my blood is mixed with your own, I shall be able to share my abilities and consciousness with you at any moment desired. What each of us sees, hears, feels, or experiences may be shared with the others. You will have access to my knowledge of spells and Sakari history. Use my power well, and you will experience even greater blessings from me in the future. The women nod, their faces smeared with red, and their bosoms heaving up and down with ecstasy. The power that each feels within is unlike any they have ever known, and is intoxicating, leaving each lustily craving more. Rockland, Indiana, August 7th, 1998. Daniela Danny Livingston exits the small shower, still wet, as once again her mother has neglected to do any laundry, and there are no dry towels hanging. Standing in front of the mirror, she stares at the sad image of a girl plagued by guilt. Due to her assistance, an ancient demon-like creature named Ymira was unleashed upon the world, and many people were slaughtered. Her black hair is matted to the side of her face, and all of its usually colorful dye has been washed out. She slowly wipes away the steam from the glass in a semicircle, revealing a large red ring of scar tissue directly between her breasts. She touches the wound and shudders as she remembers the energy beam piercing her and the resulting darkness and cold that overtook her. How am I still alive? She wonders as she begins to dress. I guess that isn't the correct word to be using. How am I alive again is probably the better way to phrase it. I know that I died. Amy confirmed that when she told me that she spoke to my ghost. Danny slips on a black tank top that clings to her still wet flesh, and she begins to slowly brush the tangles out of her hair. Was it those magicians that resurrected me? But why? Danny pulls on her underwear and a pair of baggy black jeans with chains hanging off them. Finished dressing, she exits the small closet-like room designated as hers within the 4-room upper loft apartment. Located only a few-minute walk from the now-closed martial arts dojo of Elian Schaefer, the apartment building is in the center of the highest crime and most impoverished area of Rockland. A tall and slender woman with hair so dark black that no light escapes it leans her head back over the couch after hearing the bedroom door open. "Danny, grab me a beer, will ya?" Rochelle Livingston asks with little emotion. Danny sighs, altering her present course and veering into the small kitchen. When she opens the refrigerator, there aren't many options. There is no food, and the only beverages are alcoholic in nature. "Hurry up! I want a few in me before Steve gets home and drinks the rest." At the sound of the name of Steve Janison, Danny's fists clench tightly. He is the source of most of her anguish, and the genesis of the changes in her mother over the past several years. When Steve and Rochelle started dating 2 years ago, Danny's world fell apart. Not only did her mother no longer pay her any attention, she also stopped working and started drinking heavily. Soon after, the beatings came. Coming home after several days hauling cargo in his on-lease 16-wheeler, Steve would drink and drink until he would become angry and belligerent. First would come the shouting. Then, as his hands would animate to show his emotions, he would hit anyone he could get a hold of. "Get it yourself," Danny says, shutting her eyes and closing the refrigerator door. She pushes back the pain of having to defy her mother in order to help her. "I'm done enabling you." Danny returns to her room and locks the door, sliding down the wall to the floor in tears. She pictures the fun she had with Klaus, Marcus, and Master Schaefer while in class. Laughter and birthday parties with cake and balloons filling up the warehouse used as the dojo. Not every day was serious training, and Elian had a softer side shown only to his pupils. "All of the horrible things you did, and all the people that you killed. Why can't I hate you?" Danny cries. "I need you now, and you abandoned me." On the floor beside her lies the invitation spell left with her by Master Juvet Diota of the magical city hidden in the astral realm, Todd and Delgian. Lighting several candles, Danny whispers the incantation before setting the paper atop the flames. "Yes," she whispers. "I've decided, yes." Walking with the same confidence as before, Forgeron returns to the police station, with the intention being to search the evidence lockers for the seized Book of the Black Earth. The station is still in disarray, with plastic on the walls of areas damaged by Basa Ia energy blasts. The prison remains closed after nearly all of its inhabitants were killed. Those left hiding in their cells were promptly transferred out to surrounding precincts. With a strange look of recognition, Ruth meets Master Forgeron as he enters. "How may I help you, sir? We have limited officers available to speak with, but if you don't mind waiting, I can fit you in." "That will not be necessary." "Do you have a crime to report? Right now all dispatches are going through the Crime Stoppers and our emergency hotlines." Forgeron draws the symbols of control and influence, infusing them with the element of dominion. "Vidare al controle," Forgeron says, overriding Ruth's will with his own. "I need to see all of the evidence collected for the case against Jake Stewart." "Outside, around back," Ruth says, very zombie-like. "Trailer 4, she adds, handing the man a trailer key. Controlling multiple minds simultaneously is difficult, and as two officers approach from the back, Forgeron manipulates the light in the room to bend it around him and effectively render himself invisible. Hidden from their sight, Forgeron moves past the officers and through the door leading to the parking lot for cruisers and evidence trailers. Matching the key to the correct building, Forgeron enters and rummages through the personal effects of not only Elian Schaefer, but also Jake Stewart and all of his other victims. Bagged up clothing stained with blood, trophies and banners from the dojo, Jake's schoolbooks and backpack, and many other items fill the dark trailer. 2 hours of searching, and the master magician is at the end of his patience. Not a single lead as to the whereabouts of the book had been found. Suddenly it dawns on him, the obvious answer that has been staring him in the face all day. She took it, Forgeron whispers. And if I'm lucky, she'll bring it with her to Endelgian.